Welcome to the Movement PT Coffee Cast, where we sit down and talk about physical therapy, health, and whatever else comes to mind during our coffee infused conversations. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Movement PT Coffee Cast. My name's Dalton, and with me, as always, is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
I can't complain, Dalton. I'm doing pretty good, man. How
Yeah,
are you?
I'm good. The weekend is coming to an end, which means we're heading back to placement on Monday. So I'm just kind of getting prepared for all my clients I got coming up.
Sounds good. And you're
Yeah,
seeing like at your placement a few post-op patients, eh?
yeah, we're seeing some post hip, post knee, and some post ACL, which kind of leads into our guest today. Today we're doing an interview with Wesley Wang. He's a physiotherapist. Actually, he works at the same place that we just recently had a guest on, Teddy, at Healthy Baller. So we're excited to sit down and talk to him about his experiences, especially dealing with ACL rehab. So Wesley, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Not too bad. We're excited to dive into this topic a little bit. I think it's something that me and Will we've gotten a little bit of exposure in school, but I think it's something that we want to learn more about. So we're excited to chat with you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you just kind of kick it off and just introduce yourself to our listeners and kind of let them know who you are and where you're practicing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Wesley. I work in Maryland, Rockville, Maryland, with Teddy, strength coach therapy, as some of you guys may know him. We work at an athletic training facility where they offer physical therapy. So it's actually just the two of us that are PTs. So it's kind of nice just because it is smallish, but at the same time, Teddy and I can kind of bounce ideas off each other. But I graduated from the University of Maryland as far as undergrad goes with an economics degree, so it's actually irrelevant now.
Yeah.
And then I decided to pursue physical therapy after I actually tore my ACL myself. I just kind of fell in love with the field, went back and did my prerequisites, and then decided to do PT. And then I graduated in 2015 from Franklin Pierce University, which is a school in New Hampshire.
Nice. Cool. That's an interesting journey to physio. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't what I expected. I think I going to high school, college, I always thought I was going to be in just straight business for the rest of my life. And then I worked at it for about, I think 2 months in, I knew it wasn't for me. So thankfully I did get my ACL. And to this day, I still believe that it was one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life.
So maybe you could elaborate on that. How did that get you into physical therapy?
So I tore my ACL playing basketball. Sports have always been a big part of my life. I started going to physical therapy, and then at the same time I would go to PT in the morning and then go to work after that. So I have about an hour commute, a lot of thinking time basically. And I kind of was thinking about how much my PT loved her job. She was really happy and everything like that. She got to work with athletes, and I was going into this job where I was sitting in a cubicle 40 hours a week staring at Excel. So I kind of just was reevaluating what I wanted to do the next 40 years of my life. And I knew it wasn't sitting in front of a computer. I talked to some friends who are PTs, and they were like, yeah, you would make a great fit for this field. So I kind of just made the leap and went for it.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. That's a little different than I think of most people's, but that's cool that you finally found like what you want to do. I know you used to work somewhere else, right? Before you went in and started working with Teddy. Kind of where were you working before, and how'd you find your way there?
So I was working at a kind of a typical, we call it a physician clinic. And I saw a lot of post-ops, rotator cuffs, total hips, total knees. Every once in a while, I would get like a younger athlete or an ACL, and then I would always want to like hold on to them. But we had PTAs too, so sometimes it was out of my control. I would do the evaluation, and then I wouldn't see them for 2 months, and I was just like, it was so frustrating because I'll be seeing these total after total knee. I was like, this is so boring. Just let's work on your bending back and forth. And it's very much needed, obviously. But I think for me, I got into this field because I wanted to work with athletes. And it's funny. The reason why I actually ended up linking up with Teddy was actually through Instagram.
Nice.
I made my own Instagram, just kind of push myself out of my comfort zone. I'm never the type to kind of want to, yeah, I'm very reserved. I'm very introverted. So I don't like to be wrong in a sense, but it's not that I want to be right. I just don't like being wrong. But I think my Instagram just kind of pushed me outside my comfort zone. And then Teddy and I ended up treating the same girl because she was 4 months post-op ACL, and I had to hand her off to somebody because my facility was limited. You know, it was our heaviest dumbbell was 10 pounds. I could only get her so strong. But her team was training at Healthy Baller, and then she linked up with Teddy, and then he kind of messaged me and was like, "Hey, like, what have you been doing with her in progress and stuff like that?" And then I just reached out to him. I was like, "Do you mind if I just come shadow you?" And then this was March of 2017, so a little over a year ago. And then the first day I met him, I walked in and I was like, "Wow, this is it. Like, this is the type of facility I want to work at." And I kind of joked with him the first day. I was like, you know, like, "Hey, if you ever want to hire a second physical therapist, like, I'd love to work at this type of facility." And then he kind of like shrugged it off, like, "Yeah, I understand." And I think 4 or 5 months later, we met up again, and he's like, "I'm looking to hire a therapist." And I was like, "What?" So it kind of just moved really, really quickly. So within meeting him 6 months later, he chose to hire me, and I started in October of last year. It's just been kind of growing ever since.
That's awesome.
Crazy how that can happen, eh? Like with the ability to connect with people on social media and everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I met you guys too.
Yeah. No, I feel like we just have this conversation over and over again. It's just crazy how much you can connect with people through the internet.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like the one question I had for you, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, was the fact that you were working at a clinic, where then you had to kind of pass off that person to Teddy's clinic because your prior clinic didn't have the ability to treat that person through the full spectrum of the rehab. What were some of the differences that you see between like those two clinics, and why some clinics are unable to actually take the athlete through the full spectrum?
I think the two biggest is probably equipment and space. At Healthy Ball, we have a 40-yard turf field, so I can really kind of engage my athletes, get them running, accelerating, decelerating, plyometrics, all that kind of stuff that you can't really do. And I used to have to like figure out ways to do that at my old job. Like I had to maybe sometimes take patients outside in like 95-degree weather and ask her to do like some soccer stuff, which is not the most conducive. And at the end of the day, like we only get 30 minutes. So it's like we had to rush outside, rush back in. So it's kind of very rushed. And at the end of the day, also equipment, like I said earlier, we only had a 10-pound dumbbell. I think that was the heaviest. And then maybe a couple of 15-pound kettlebells. That was about it. So it's really hard to load up an athlete. Like maybe if you're a really petite person, you can get away with that. But you know, if you're a decent size, like even like 160, 170-pound athlete, it's really hard, that much stronger if you're limited by just 10-pound weights. We didn't even have a squat rack, no sleds for sprinting. There's just a ton of stuff that we have at Healthy Baller now that we didn't really have at any other facility that I worked at previously.
Yeah,
That's cool.
The one thing that I was interested in asking you was in terms of like instilling confidence in athletes who've had an ACL. Like I feel like that's something that's huge. It's something I've noticed a little bit on my placement. I've seen a couple people who've post ACL, and confidence is a huge thing. How do you go about instilling that confidence in your athletes and the people that you see, I guess, both in terms of like movement and just your education for them?
So I think one of the first questions I would ask somebody is how they twerk. So for example, if a girl tore their ACL making a tackle or coming to a deceleration off playing soccer, I would want to put them in that situation multiple times so that kind of mental barrier gets over it. And also just thinking about, I also like to ask them, what position do you play? Because obviously someone who plays offense versus defense is a little bit different in how they move, how they land. I'm treating a girl right now who's a goalie in soccer, so I have to work on completely different things than what I would do for, you know, like a point guard in basketball type of thing. And even using myself as an example, I put my ACL going up for a layup. I went up for a layup. A guy tried to block me from behind and took me out in midair. So it took me a long time as far as like mental reps goes. Every time I went up for a layup, I would always kind of look behind me and kind of think about like that situation. I think that was one thing that my PT didn't get a chance to work on with me. So I think just based on my own personal experience, I really take that into how I treat my current athletes. But I'm 100% believer in putting them in situations and how they injured it, so that kind of fear is completely gone. And just continuously challenging them in numerous different ways, advanced plyometrics, continue to make them feel stronger and stronger. These are all different things that I feel like most facilities and maybe even most PTs don't really have experience with. But I've kind of chosen to dive into that. And again, I think based on my personal experience, it definitely helps me just because I know exactly what these athletes are kind of going through.
Right. Is there like some education you have to do as far as like, or a discussion that you have to do to motivate those people to go into positions that they might be scared of going into or unsure about?
It's definitely a gradual thing.
Yeah.
For example, if it is cutting, we start with really light plyometrics and kind of work your way up type of thing. And eventually over time, that confidence just kind of naturally builds on each other. And then eventually I almost try to put them in that situation without them even thinking about it. Like one girl I work with, she played defense in soccer. So I had one of my coworkers who played soccer. I was like, just dribble at her. And then, so she kind of just fell into kind of her zone of playing sports and didn't even think about it. And she's like, wait, I just kind of reacted and did plyometrics back and forth. And she's like, and I felt fine. I was like, yeah, exactly. And to me, that's exactly what I want. And just kind of, we just kept hashing at it over and over and over again. And I think for her, she's actually one of my primary patients to work with. And then she texted me after her first game. She's like, I felt amazing, like 100% better, zero fear. And she was like, I went in for a couple tackles. And I was like, that's exactly what I want. And even her mom texted me, was like, yeah, we were more scared than she was to go out there. And I was like, I'm fine with that. I can't help you guys, but I can help her.
Stay away.
Yeah, exactly. And I went to go watch her second game, and that's the same thing. Even just for me, I was like, I'm scared to watch her play, but she had like no reservations with anything, and that's for as far as the ACL rehab goes, that's exactly what I want. And unfortunately, some of the patients I have, they have friends who tear their ACL, and they're like, yeah, my friend thinks that they're ready, or they're worried about going back, and those are kind of stuff I guess it scares me as a clinician, because I never want my athletes to be fearful of going back. Anxiety is different, but like fears, that means that they have not rehabbed enough. And
right.
And the research doing about like psychological component of rehab too, and that's kind of what we've been talking about this whole time, is that if you're not psychologically ready, then you're not ready at all. So it's, as much as it is physical, there's a big mental, psychological side to rehab as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is there like so like if you say you're with someone that gets to that point where they're having some of those psychological barriers, like is there certain check marks that you try to get checked off, or certain strategies that you're using to try to help them get over that hump to get back to sport?
I think the easiest way is honestly just lots and lots of repetitions. Some people are going to take just a little bit longer, but I'm also a big fan of incorporating the sport as frequently as possible, even if it's simple as, at 2 months doing a single leg balance exercise. If it's a soccer player, like just throwing the ball with them back and forth, or having them do like a basketball pass back and forth. I really try to incorporate their sport as much as possible, just because I found that the more that they feel like they're working towards something, the more they're kind of like they start seeing the light in the tunnel kind of type of thing.
Yeah.
Particularly in that first 3 to 4 months of rehab, you're not jogging yet, you're not sprinting, it just seems so far away. But usually once athletes get to that kind of like 6-7 month mark, as long as they feel like they've had a good steady recovery, obviously they're like, okay, I know I'm like 3 months away, and it's a lot closer than 4 or 5 months ago when I was doing knee flexions back and forth type of thing. But yeah, I don't think I have a clear cut, like definitive, like everything. It's just lots and lots of reps. Keep talking to them, like, and I do tell them to be honest with me too. Like, are you fearful of this? And I ask a lot of questions to them, or maybe they're annoyed at me, but I'd rather have me be, probing a little more, and figuring out like what details I need to fill in, as opposed to not asking enough questions type of thing.
Cool.
Yeah. Is there ever a point, I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with it, but kind of the opposite, where you have to hold people back because they're going out too hard or too fast?
Oh yeah, 100%. Just because because these I see mostly younger athletes, so they tend to recover pretty quick. And yeah, there's definitely times that like, and I actually, if they start seeing me from day one post-op, I tell every single one, assuming you have a normal recovery, at about 4 months, you're going to start feeling like you're quote unquote normal. You're going to be running pretty confidently. But I always tell them that, again, this helps because I've been there. My PT told me the exact same thing. She's like, yeah, at 4 to 5 months, you're going to feel like you can play basketball again. But she's like, don't do it. So I really tell them that too, because at the end of the day, 4 or 5 months, you still have a lot of strength deficits, balance deficits, neuromuscular deficits. There's so much to still work on. And I actually sometimes will make stuff a little bit harder just to prove it to them that they still have more to do.
Nice.
That's kind of my way of like telling them without verbally being like, oh, you're not ready type of thing. And I asked them like, does it feel different between the affected side and the non-affected side? And the majority of the time they're like, yeah, or they kind of know it in the back of their mind that it doesn't quite feel the same yet. And that's why I'm a firm believer that it takes at minimum 9 months to a year for a full recovery from ACL. I think a lot of these kids nowadays are going back way too early at 6 months because whether coaches, surgeons are telling them too early, there's just so much to work on in the entire rehab process.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead, Will. You're going to say something?
I was just going to ask, like, where did you kind of go to get some resources to learn more about this?
As far as ACL rehab goes?
Yeah.
Some of it was based on my own experience, just because I've been there. But I think where I really started to dive in, I think probably about a year ago is when I really was like, I think this is something I really want to be interested in. And then being at Healthy Baller really allowed me to be like, oh, I want to market myself as an ACL specialist. But as simple as it may sound, I go on like JOSPT and then just type in ACL rehab protocol or ACL rehab, whatever it is, interventions and research and things like that, and just look up meta-analysis after meta-analysis and just figuring out like what needs to be improved upon, and just kind of like stockpiling them all together and then kind of putting it into my own spin in a way based on experience and research. I try to be as research oriented as possible, especially when it comes to any type of treatment, just because that's what these people are doing. They're going out there and choosing to dive into it. So they're essentially doing the work for me. I just got to read it. That's probably the easiest way if any new grad or any clinician is looking to dive into it. Just go on one of these big pubs and just start reading away one at a time, once every 3 days type of thing. And it kind of just over time just kind of starts being ingrained in your head and kind of becoming more natural, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah. I know we touched a little bit before the podcast. You were kind of mentioning like criteria based versus time based. Can you like touch on that a little bit more in terms of like progressing athletes through the protocol?
Yeah. So at the physicians' facilities that I used to work for, the surgeons, every protocol is more or less the same. Maybe if you had a meniscus repair, it would be a little bit delayed, but it would be the same. It was 0 to 6 weeks. It would be your kind of protective range of motion phase. 6 to 12 weeks is your early strengthening phase. And then basically maybe 12 weeks plus, or 12 weeks to 16 would be like the medium strengthening phase, and then moderate strengthening phase. And then 16 plus would be advanced. And I was like, all right, well, I guess it kind of makes sense. But now, because I kind of work with so many different ACL patients, is that no two ACL patients ever recover the same. And if you hand this protocol, if I handed you, Dalton, to this protocol, and then you were like, let's say you are at 8 weeks, the protocol tells you that you are supposed to have full range of motion by 6 weeks, and you're at 8 weeks and you're not there. Like, what does that do to you kind of psychologically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, I same thing to Will, and then he's at 4 weeks, and he's like, oh, wow, I'm way ahead of the game type of thing. Then Will's the type that I have to kind of rein back a little bit because he's ahead of the game, but you, on the other hand, are a little bit behind. So it's like, I don't like these athletes getting caught up in 0 to 6 weeks, 12 weeks. But criteria-based is the same across the board. Once you meet these, 6 to 8 criteria, let's go to the next phase type of thing. That's why I tend to like criteria-based significantly more than time-based.
Yeah, I like that because, like I said kind of before, I'm starting to see some post-op ACLs at my placement, and that's something I've had a hard time dealing with. Like, it's based off that time base that you're talking about, and I think the same thing kind of happened to me from like a physio perspective is like, okay, they're at this many weeks out, but like, what am I seeing from them specifically, like in terms of my like objective findings and what they're telling me? So I think I'm going to definitely take a look at that, like more criteria based thing to help guide me for sure in terms of like making me feel a little bit more confident when maybe someone can move forward or maybe have to hold them back.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, even as a new grad, it kind of puts pressure on yourself too, because you're like, oh no, my patient only has 120 degrees of knee flexion, but they're supposed to be at 135, and it's like, oh crap, like what am I doing wrong type of thing.
Right.
At the end of the day, criteria is like, as long as you meet these, and criteria is, I think, the one maybe downfall or one like gray mark that you can have in it is that like, if it takes so long to meet the first criteria, that first batch of criteria, then they're still technically behind type of thing. But at the end of the day, it does come with experience. Like at this point, I've worked with a lot of ACLs. I think I have like 10 on my caseload right now at this point, and it's only kind of continuing to grow. So I'm confident in treating ACLs, but at the end of the day, it's because I've treated so many for the past 3 years or so. And as you kind of get more comfortable as a clinician, it becomes more natural. You don't really think about it. You're just like, okay, we got to do this, this, and this before we can jog or whatever it is that you're looking for the next stage. It just kind of becomes more fluid and natural.
I'm just curious, like when you have someone like, say, someone who is taking a little bit longer initially, like maybe you're Dalton and you're at 6 weeks and you have your range of motion.
Yeah.
But have you seen those people sometimes once they reach those go quicker after, or do they tend to be more like just slower recovery across the whole time period?
Yeah, generally I would say that they're pretty slowed down. I'm a firm believer in that first kind of not to say time based, but that first like month and a half is pretty big in regards to setting the foundation for the rest of the way. And I actually do think that sometimes clinicians get too caught up in, again, if you look at a typical protocol from 0 to 6 weeks, it'll list maybe 15 to 20 exercises on there. And it's just, I think for me, at the end of the day, what I want to see in the first 6 weeks is that you have a good quad contraction, you have pretty much full range of motion, and particularly extension, I would say is what most early clinicians tend to not get all the way back. And if you can have full flexion, full extension, plus a good quad contraction, I'm a happy man at 6 weeks. Just because I've seen some athletes who are 3, 4, 5 months out post-op and they still don't even have a good quad contraction, or have yet to hit, or have yet to feel what terminal knee extension is like. That just slows down everything beyond that, because if you can't hit terminal knee extension, you're never getting a full quad contraction, meaning that your quad can get completely strong, meaning that your balance is going to be off, your gait's going to be off, your running we're not going to be able to do that, progress that too much. So that's why I'm kind of a firm believer in just setting those 3 things early on and letting them know, like, I want to see you hit these in the next, month and a half type of thing, without overwhelming them with, oh, let's do squats and let's do lunges, let's do bridges, let's do clams, all that stuff, all warranted and all stuff I give early on. But I think kind of keeping it simple with those 3 things and kind of repeatedly hashing to, like, this is what I want you to consistently working on. Just because if you throw out 10 exercises and let's say there's one day you're just really tired, then they're going to be like, oh, screw it, I'm not going to do any of them. But if you put in their head, like, let's do these 3 things, it's a lot more manageable than thinking about, like, I have to do 10 to 15 exercises.
Right. But essentially what you're saying is, if you want to make Wesley happy, show your terminal knee extension.
Yeah, I would. That's it's a huge battle, to be honest. And I think that most clinicians maybe aren't aware of what it fully feels like. Just for me, I like to like actually take them into passive extension, so they know, like, this feel the same as the other knee. And I pin the quad down and I do a heel lift as opposed to just having them squeeze down type of thing.
Right.
My favorite testing.
Off the bed.
Correct. So you can see how far the heel lifts up off the whatever the table.
Right.
And most of the time they'll be like, yeah, it feels tighter or it's uncomfortable, which is normal because you're jamming it.
Yeah.
But most of the time you'll feel like the ACL side just doesn't lift off as much as the other side. And I don't do it in the first 3 to 4 months, just because they're going to be swollen, they're protective. But towards that like kind of 6, 7, 8 week mark when the swelling should be significantly reduced, they should have been working on their extension a ton. That's when I start doing that lift, and that's when I start to gauge like what full extension feels like. And if you're passive there, I'm okay with it being passively there, but not accurately by 6 weeks. But passively, I would hope that you're there in the first 6 weeks.
The one thing we've seen is that there's like a potential for rehabbing like the ACLs like conservatively, like without surgery. Is this something you've seen like at Healthy Baller? And how do you think people can like have success without going and having surgery?
It's funny. So actually, that's me myself. I have a partial ACL tear on my left knee. It's been over 6 years now at this point. I still play basketball fine, but I stay away from stuff like I used to play flag football a lot, and I kind of stay away from field sports. Mainly just stick with basketball at this point as far as sporting goes. So it's definitely possible. But to be honest, I don't rehab myself as much as possible. I definitely should be doing more hamstring, quad, glute strengthening. And I think one of the bigger things is asking what your goals are. You know, if you want to be a competitive Division I soccer player, maybe it's going to be significant. It will be significantly harder for you to play your sport at 100% on a fully torn ACL. But if you're like a recreational bike rider, and even if you're a competitive bike rider type of thing, and you just want to do some casual hiking, I think that stuff you can get away with having an ACL tear. And there have been some professional athletes who have played, in the NFL and the NBA who had ACL tears and had 8, 9, 10-year careers and didn't have any problems. So I definitely do think it's possible, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what your goals are and how much you're willing to work for it. Because your quads and your hamstrings and your glutes need to be kind of 2-3 times as strong because they're making up for the lack of ligament stability.
So you're just saying it depends on kind of what the person's goal is. If it's maybe like really high demands, then it might not be the best approach. But if they're kind of a little bit lower demands on like the ACL specifically, then they might be able to be successful with that.
Yeah, exactly. I think the severity of the tear matters as well. Like I know for certain that I'm a partial ACL tear. I didn't get an MRI, but I've had experience with full ACL tear on my other side, so I know what it's like. Like on my full tear one, if I went up the stairs and I turned quickly, my knee would buckle.
Right.
But I don't really have that problem on my other side now. It only buckles on me if I get into like a single leg stance with my body like way outside my base of support type of thing. Usually those really weird situations in basketball that kind of come up that it'll cause my knee to buckle, but 95% of the time I don't have any problem with it.
You're looking pretty athletic.
Yeah, thanks. If you notice, I don't film myself anymore because I'm not that athletic compared to my patients. So I just keep filming them, and they're cool with it. And it works out better that way.
Do you see anyone like post-op ACL or that aren't like athletes that come and see you, or is it generally just an athletic population that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean the majority of the people that I see are high school athletes. So I would say probably close to 90% are athletes. We get the occasional adult in there with like low back pain or something like that. But definitely the majority of mine are athletes. I think I have one slightly older woman. I mean, she's in low 40s. She's not old by any means. And she's very active. Like she teaches spin classes. She does bar all the time. So she's really active. So I treat her as I would any other 17, 18-year-old athlete. Get her back, get her strong, and get her confident.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say. Is like it probably doesn't really change a whole lot of how you're treating an athlete in comparison to a non-athlete. Maybe more towards that return to sport like time when you get into that area of the recovery, then that's probably where you'd probably see it differ a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're just looking to get back into like spinning or like I said, hiking and things like that, if you're not doing a lot of cutting and agility work, then we probably don't go into that like 7, 8, 9 month time frame type of thing. But if you're looking to play Division I soccer or any soccer, but at any level, or basketball, like it's definitely going to take a little bit longer type of thing.
For sure.
Cool. we were curious. You had shared one of our posts that was about like modifying activity rather than just eliminating. So we were curious why that post specifically spoke to you, and maybe if it does relate to your treatment of ACL.
Yeah. I think that one kind of line that you guys wrote relates to all PT that I do on a regular basis, to be honest. And this kind of reverts back to how I used to treat, which was, let's say you had low back pain is probably the easiest one, and that's kind of related to your post, just because that person is doing kind of like a deadlift type of thing. In the past, if a 55-year-old person would come and be like, I have low back pain picking up my kid or picking up my grandkid, I would just be like, oh, maybe try to do a little less, something like that, or figure out a way to modify. And I think that's where the modification comes in, because I shouldn't be telling them how to modify their lives. I should be teaching them how that we can kind of work around it and build up to what they want to do. And having them understand that it's a process, that it's not just something that happens overnight. So using that deadlift example is that a lot of people have low back pain when they reach down to touch the floor. So how can I modify different exercises, use different exercises, different means to get them so that they can do that comfortably, as opposed to me just being like, hey, just why don't pick up your grandson for the next month? That's not a way to live. I've also posted a lot about how words matter, and I think like those two things kind of really coincide with one another. But I guess for ACL rehab, it does change things. I have a girl right now who's 3.5 months post-op. Didn't have the best recovery early on. I saw her at like 3 months, so I've been working with her for about a month now. So her quad wasn't as I wanted to be at that point. That's kind of what I was talking about, like quad contraction for the first 6 weeks is so important, setting the foundation. So for her, there are certain things that will cause like infrapatellar pain. But I've probably used close to 8 to 10 different quad exercises on her and asking her for feedback. What hurts? What doesn't hurt? And sometimes I won't just take it away. Sometimes I'll, like, for example, like a lateral heel touch to work on eccentrics. Instead of, if she can't do 4 inches, all right, let's try 2 inches. Let's try 1 inch. Let's just try from the floor. Don't just take away the exercise. If you think it's an effective exercise and it can benefit them, how can you kind of just regress it a little bit, as opposed to being like, oh, let's just forget about it and move on type of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's something that I personally struggle with sometimes, is like getting away. Like if the one thing that I try right away doesn't work, sometimes I'll tend to like be like, oh, like just bounce away from it instead of trying to find a way, like you're saying, like even if it's just lowering the height a little bit, or maybe like just modifying it in some little way, like kind of sticking with it, and at least trying to find a way to get it to work rather than scrapping it all together.
Yeah, definitely. And that comes with experience, to be honest. Like the more you learn about exercise, you figure out like, oh, how can I progress this and how can I regress this type of thing. And I do think that's a big part of being a good physio PT type of thing, which is why like Teddy and I don't believe in like the PT model, because most facilities, at least I don't know if it's different for you guys, but for us, we have like PTAs or PT techs, and not that they're bad. I understand the purpose behind them, but at the end of the day, they're not trained to modify the exercises. And most of the time, the progression is, okay, let's say you're doing external rotation with a band. Let's say you start at yellow, progression, red band, progression, green band. There's much more progressions than just jumping up the next band color. And that's kind of where using our PT brains, physio brains type of things in.
Yeah, that's true. That's really good. I think you're right. Probably just take some time to really get comfortable with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I, as a younger PT, not that I'm old by any means, but something one of my clinical instructors would encourage me to do was to, like, let's say you have 6 patients the next day. Think about like what you want to do with them. So you said you have an ACL. Think about what you want to do. And then she would ask me, okay, what would you do if they walked in and they had pain or they just hurt? So you automatically had your regressions right there. And then what if they came in and like, oh, these are way too easy. Okay, cool. These are your progressions. So you kind of already plan ahead type of thing. And I did that for probably 6 months or so. And then it becomes kind of naturally just ingrained in your head about like, okay, if this hurts, I know what to do to modify it type of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good tip for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a little section. We are the PT Coffee Cast. So we like to ask our guests how they brew their coffee.
So I do drink coffee every day. I'm not a morning person at all, so it kind of just depends on the day. Ideally, I do actually French press. Yeah, and I have a friend who works at a coffee shop locally, and he kind of gives me beans, which is really nice. So on those days, I feel really good. But on the days that I'm kind of slacking or wake up a little later, I just have to do Keurig, which sucks. Definitely takes the difference between the two. But in a perfect world, I would do French press every day.
Oh,
That's
that's awesome.
that's the first time we've had someone mention the French press, I think, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Most people are like where you are on a rough day with the Keurig, I think.
Yeah, it's completely just the convenience factor of it.
Yeah.
You roll downstairs, push it,
Go
put
in.
my lunch in my backpack, and I'm good to go.
I mean,
How do you drink your coffee? Do you drink it black?
With cream, just cream. I don't put any sugar. I don't put any extra sugar in it.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yes. I just love the fact that you said you drink coffee every day. The second you said that, you're good in my books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit too much, but it's at this point, I don't even know if it helps me. It's almost more just like habitual, and I like the taste of it. So it's a good way to start the day, especially in like the cold, fall, winter time type of thing.
Nothing better.
Yeah, for sure. We like the process, because you're sitting there and you smell it and you get so excited for the cup.
Yeah, definitely.
More than just drinking it.
Definitely.
So we kind of just wanted to ask you a little bit about what you think is like the most rewarding part of your job and kind of what gets you pumped up to get up in the morning and go and do what you do every day.
Yeah. So at this job in particular with Teddy Healthy Baller, it's a unique environment. Just because legitimately the team just kind of gets along really, really well with each other. Teddy and I get along really well as PTs. And I think just the fact that I treat it almost as my own business, and we get to spend an hour with every patient, which is kind of unique. The facility, just walking in every day is really nice, just because you have this space to use. And most of the athletes who come in to see us are very motivated, and that kind of just combined with everything just kind of creates like this really, really nice environment. And unfortunately, you're going to get athletes who I end up seeing for a few months at a time, and as I said earlier, you kind of end up building this relationship with them to the point where I do want to go support them at their games, keep in touch with them continuously even after they finish, and I hope that all the athletes that do come in to work with me, or even any patient period, that they recognize that I'm passionate about this field, that I care about them not just as a person, or not just as a number or whatever, but as a person. Ask them how their weekends are doing. And I think even small stuff like that, it really does go a long way, that they're not just every day coming how's your knee, how's your knee, how's your knee, but it's figuring out the other side of it. It's oh, where do you want to go to school? What do you want to major in? Stuff like that. I just feel like they're small, but it does, I think that patients kind of see the passion behind it.
Man, it's so awesome to hear that. And I think you can clearly tell how passionate you are with obviously the way you talk about it and everything, relating it back to your experience. And I think for students to hear about that too, and just to hear a PT with some experience that's so fired up about their job, that they want to keep in touch with the people that they've helped, and they get excited to go to work every day. I think that's really important for people to hear.
Yeah, for sure. It's weird because I have friends who don't necessarily love the jobs, and I kind of feel bad sometimes where it's I love my job. Sure, there's good days and bad days where I don't really want to wake up at 7:00 in the morning to get to work. Once I get there and kind of see my first patient, it's kind of all right, let's do it. Let's just get the ball rolling type of thing. And I'm definitely determined to kind of, I don't know, it's cliche to say, but make a difference in regards to how people view PT, how people view ACL rehab, just so many things that I have in mind that I want to become on the positive side of it. And unfortunately, there's a good amount of bad PTs out there that just don't care about their jobs. And I think I try not to take that for granted, because these people are coming to see you to seek help. And that will carry a lot of weight, which is why I think kind of keeps me motivated to becoming a better clinician every single day.
That's awesome. Great to hear that. We do what's new, what's coming up, what's coming down the pipe for you? Do you have anything in the works for, like your social media account or anything you're kind of doing on the side with Healthy Baller or?
So I actually am working on a very large project right now. I'm not going to announce it just because I'm waiting to finish it. But I would say in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I will be announcing it on my social media account. It's something, it is definitely related to ACL rehab, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. But I kind of am just putting the finishing touches on it and everything. But I'm really, really pumped up for the opportunities ahead. It's really cool because the owners and my coworkers at Healthy Baller have been really supportive of this, and they think that it could be something really big. Not to keep everyone in the dark by any means, but I just want to wait until I finish it to kind of put it out there and everything. Cool. But that probably has taken up about 90% of my time outside of work.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it with everyone, to be honest. I wish I could just say it right now, but I'm almost like not jinxing it in a way and just kind of finishing it. It's I would say it's about 80% done right now.
Cool, that's awesome.
Well, that's super exciting. Cool.
To kind of wrap it up, we like to ask every one of our guests, like, if they could go back and you could offer like one piece of advice to yourself when you're coming out of school and you're just getting into the profession, what is something you would offer yourself?
For me personally, definitely a willingness to be pushed outside my comfort zone. I think I went into when I first job, it was just, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and I thought that was gonna be it. And I didn't really see any advancement. It was like every year I'll get my 3-4% pay raise and kind of keep going on for there type of thing. And there was, I think I put a ceiling on myself without even thinking about what potentially I could do. And I thought it would take me close to 5 to 6 years to get to a place like Healthy Baller, being in a cash-based facility, being able to treat patients one-on-one for an hour, that type of thing, and being able to treat the way that I think that PT and physio should be done. I thought it would take me a while to get there, but thankfully I'm in this situation now, and it only took 2.5 years or so. But 100% just have a willingness to be pushed outside your comfort zone and never stop learning, which I've heard other people say all. It's just, I think some of my coworkers in the past, not to bash on them, but you can just kind of tell that they weren't super passionate about the field, and that they were still doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I guess that's not where I ever want to be. I want to be, as up to date as possible, learning from other people, learning from other PTs, chiros, whatever it is. It doesn't need to be just within the field. I learn from the trainers at Healthy Baller all the time. They're doing exercise. I'll be like, hey, can you teach that to me or show that to me? Because I'm always trying to think about how I can incorporate that into my rehab sessions. So I think just always trying to learn, push yourself is going to be a big thing for any new grad.
Awesome.
I think that's awesome advice.
The one thing that really motivates me, like the more and more we talk to people, specifically like just what you just said there, is like you didn't have to wait. Like you thought you would have to wait a longer period of time to get to that job that you wanted, like the environment you're in now. And it motivates me to hear that you got there sooner than you thought, and that if it's something that I want to do, that if I put the work in and the time and put my effort towards it, that I can like create that a little sooner than I actually think. And it just motivates me to continue to talk to people that are doing stuff like that. So appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%. I think part of the reason why I did put that ceiling on myself was because I struggled through PT school. I was legitimately at the bottom of my class. I was on probation. I didn't even think I was going to make it. I walked in and the dean of the program was like, if you get a B-, you're done with the program. I was like, okay, that's a lot of stress to put onto somebody going into your hardest academic semester. But yeah, thankfully I made it through. And then, starting for me, I actually think that starting that Instagram was actually a really big deal for me, not because of followers or whatever it is, just because I was like, I'm putting this up out there and people are reading it, and it's like, it could be wrong, but also a willingness to be wrong is a part of that pushing yourself out of your comfort zone process, because I probably am wrong sometimes, and people have called me out on it, but I learn from it and then kind of move forward. So I definitely think that like consistently wanting to grow and better yourself as a clinician is something that I encourage every young physio or PT to kind of keep going at.
That's awesome. Thanks. We really appreciate you just taking the time to come on and chat with us. I know you're busy and you got a lot going on, but we really appreciate you coming and sharing your knowledge in ACL and move into an environment like Healthy Baller and just kind of encouraging us to continue on doing our thing. We appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. It's been good. This is actually only my second podcast, but it's been good. I listen to your guys' podcast all the time. You guys have a lot of really, really great PTs and physios and on it. People who I've interacted with a lot. So you guys, I encourage you guys to keep it up.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, man. If you want, if like people aren't following you, just let them know where they can find you.
Sure. On Instagram, it's just at wesley.wang.dpt. I have a Facebook too. I think it's the exact same handle as on Facebook.
Cool.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks again, Wesley. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Cool.
Bye. That wraps up episode 27 of the PT Coffee Cast with Wesley Wang. We'd like to thank Wesley for coming on, chatting with us. He gave some great insight into how he approaches ACL rehab, specifically with an athletic population. So I know we took a lot away from this episode, and I hope you guys do too. If you guys want to learn more about Wesley, head over to his Instagram, give him a follow there. He's also on Facebook. He puts out great content. He puts out content that's easily digestible that you can actually take and put right into your practice, or if you're a student, can bring right into placement. So again, thank you, Wesley, for coming on. If you guys want to learn more about us, head over to our Instagram page, our Facebook page, and our Twitter page. We're at the MVMT PTs. As well as, guys, if you like this episode, could you go over to iTunes, leave us a review, subscribe, and share this episode with one other person. We want to continue to spread our message and spread the amazing conversations we're having with great people in this profession. Also, guys, we just launched a new student initiative called Students Driving Health. So this is going to be a Facebook group specifically for students to come together, connect, share resources, and have open conversations about topics in the profession as well as the state of the profession. We've developed such great relationships with other students through our Instagram page that we wanted to take this and bring it to a larger platform. So guys, you can find that in the show notes, or you can just search it on Facebook, Student Driving Change. So that's all we got for today, guys. We really appreciate your support as always. It means the world to us. It's the reason why we continue to do this every week. So thank you very much, and get your coffee ready because we will be back next week. Peace.